Oh, some of your views on primarily politics and just the world in general. And I'll start by asking you this. What do you think about the situation that's recently occurred in Wisconsin? And I don't need to go in depth on that.
Right.
Would you have some input you might want to share with me?
Well, I think as unions are disappearing more or less from the scene in labor markets in the United States, it's not surprising that they would decide to have a pitched battle up in Wisconsin. I happen to agree with the governor of Wisconsin that he needs to be able to leave behind the contractual obligations that they have. That, for instance, deal with their teacher tenure system, deal with the fact, for instance, that they were going to have to lay off 1,500 teachers to deal with their budget problem, since they average $101,000 benefits and salary a year, average, in Wisconsin. They're going to lay off 1,500 teachers, and one of the teachers was going to be their Teacher of the Year last year because she's too new, because the labor contract that they have with the union says that they have to lay off people based on seniority. So we have to get away from doing things that don't make sense. We compete in a worldwide labor market, and unions are slowly disappearing. This is just a part of a long march to me.
Now, I'm not sure the connection between what happened there and the Tea Party, but I'll flow from that topic into the Tea Party and just get your, first of all, overall assessment of the Tea Party.
You know, I find the Tea Party phenomenon fairly strange. I'm not exactly sure I understand what they're either for or against. I think it basically arises from the discontent that the American middle class feels when they look out on a life where it's not getting better for them from generation to generation. Again, it's our entry into a worldwide, a global economy, and trying to compete within a global economy, and that's leaving a lot of the American middle class behind. And people are groping for answers as to why that is. Some people think it's because, for instance, we don't have strong enough unions. On the right side of the political spectrum, people think, oh, well, the government's getting in the way, that's why we're falling behind. I don't think either one of those happens to be true. The Tea Party is not really, it's not a party, it's not a program, it's a sense of discontent. And when they try and express it in terms of policy, a lot of times it doesn't make sense what they think that they want. It's a little bit like dealing with a child who doesn't really know what they want, all they know is they're unhappy. Maybe like dealing with a teenager. So I find that there's a lot of emotion there. There's something real there, this sense of discontent and unhappiness in the middle class, a sense of disaffection, maybe a loss of the great American middle that we've had for most of the 20th century in this country. Maybe to some extent we're fragmenting as a polity. I connect it, with this very strange growth of the conservative Christian homeschool community, which is a group of people who largely really just want to withdraw from society and from the public square, I guess I'd say. And they want the government to leave them alone while they withdraw. So I find the Tea Party is sort of an odd, I guess, phenomenon.
Why do you think they're necessarily so bent on fiscal matters as far as reducing the budget? Apparently, I say apparently, ostensibly anyway.
Well, these are people who want the government to leave them alone, and this is why I connect it with the conservative Christian sort of separatist group. They don't want the government to tax them. They do tend to want government benefits without having to pay for them. They don't have, obviously, a well-developed set of ideas regarding foreign policy or regarding educational policy or on and on and on. They just want the government to leave them alone. And they're focused naturally on the most invasive thing the government does is it taxes us. It was Judge Learned Hand that said the power to tax is the power to destroy. So that's why they're focusing on fiscal matters. They see that if we can't possibly continue to spend at this ruinous rate, and that it will have to be addressed by tax increases in the future.
So how do we, again, sort of flip-flopping around here, how do we compete globally? I mean, you made reference to that earlier.
Yeah, that's a tough
source of disenchantment.
Right.
And why are we not able as a middle class to continue to climb the ladder, so to speak?
Well, I think that a lot of it is just an historical evolution that, for instance, England went through as America rose. I don't know that there are really a lot of policy prescriptions that can deal with the movement of manufacturing. The big thing was the movement of skilled manufacturing away from the United States and moving to areas of the world that had never done manufacturing before, where you're bringing literally billions of people into the labor pool who can work for $2 or $3 a day. That is a change that's so enormous. I don't think there's a set of policies that can deal with that. So to some extent, there is an inevitability to this problem of, I'm going to say, middle class decline. I think individuals can address it through education, but as a society at large, can we reassert ourselves against globalization? I doubt it.
So are we stuck?
Yeah, I think
for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think that we are. Yeah, I think we are stuck. I think we're in a kind of comfortable decline, or we're headed that way.
Now, what would be your assessment, and I don't know exactly how to word this. I think I heard Charlie Rose, or no, it probably wasn't him, but maybe Michael Moore, or someone saying that maybe the 1% of the population in the United States has, this is probably wrong, but I'll say 95% of the money, okay? And whether it's 80% or not, some large percentage.
Right.
I don't remember the statistic, but the imbalance of wealth.
Right.
Would you have anything to say about that, or is that all right, or does it need to be?
Well, I think in part in large part it's inevitable, and again it reflects the things I've already talked about. Especially the loss of the high quality middle class manufacturing jobs. That's what's really skewed wealth toward the highly educated, towards finance, for instance. And that may be part of what's causing the entire American polity to maybe have less cohesion. But I'm not sure that it's possible to further tax away the wealth of this top, we'll say 5%. I mean, the top 5% are already paying 90% of all the income taxes in the country. So it's almost impossible. You know, that 50% of this nation doesn't pay any income tax at all. It's very difficult now to make the tax code more progressive and to quote unquote redistribute this wealth without actually blunting the desire of that top 5% to work. We depend on them. I'm not in that group. You're not. Perhaps you're in that group, but I'm not in that group. But I depend on that group. I depend on that group to work, to invest, and to make their capital work. And I think that if we tried just to redistribute the wealth in an effort to deal with the discontents of globalization, I think all we're going to do is make the mule stop working as hard and impoverish all of us. I don't think that beggaring your neighbor is a good philosophy. I'm sorry to say, I don't think that there are obvious policy alternatives to return us to the 1950s, for instance.
Well, that's certainly one assessment, and now Warren Buffett and others, as I understand, indicate that they're in favor of higher taxation. Have I misread some of their comments to Bill Gates and the Warren Buffetts of the world, the elitist, that they've come out in favor of higher taxation?
You know, I'm really not familiar with what Buffett's view of that would be. But of course, when you're worth $27 billion or whatever he's worth,
okay,
a few extra million on your income tax doesn't really make a lot of difference in your lifestyle.
The point being, let's say, and I can't even relate to billions of dollars, but let's say one's worth $50 billion, and all of a sudden they tax half of it, $25 billion. Now that's going to put them in a bad shape, right?
If you mean taxing them on their wealth instead of their income. That's something we've never done in this country.
Well, through estate taxes and that sort of thing.
Oh.
You see, I mean, that's one way of doing it.
Right.
I mean,
right. All right, so that's a different issue. The estate tax is not really going to be effective, I don't think, in redistributing income in the way that you're looking to do. There's not a lot of estate tax paid now. These people at that level are they're inevitably able to find loopholes and ways to communicate their wealth elsewhere. And Buffett and Gates, for instance, are giving most of their wealth away. So if you're looking for redistribution, they're at the forefront of that part.
Okay. I'm not sure that I've studied this enough to ask you questions about it, to be honest with you, but actually you're, I think, saying that a redistribution of the wealth is really not going to enhance our standard of living.
Correct.
Would that be your
Yeah,
bottom
that's right.
line assessment?
Right. I think the real argument for redistribution of wealth is to keep the chasm between the American middle and the top 1 or 5% from becoming so great that it endangers our democracy. And we might be willing to be poorer in order to have a more secure democracy.
Now, I'm not sure about this, but I've been told, I think, like that 1 out of 5 in Carroll County are on food stamps. Now, does that surprise you, or would you have some proposed remedy to that situation?
I would think it was higher. I mean,
well,
if I
it may be, but at least 1 in 5, and in other places
right,
it
so
may be
that,
higher.
right, so that wouldn't surprise
Let's say 20 or 25% across the state or something. So there's no solution to this?
Well, you asked me about Carroll County, so let me be responsive to Carroll County. What's happening in Carroll County is, that I've noticed in the 26 years that I've lived here, is that the top of the class in all our high schools goes on to college, gets an education, and leaves and never comes back. Because there's really nothing, there are none of these jobs that we've talked about having moved to bring them back to Carroll County. And so one of the reasons that we're an impoverished county is because for probably 3 or 4 generations since World War II, our best and brightest have left and never come back. And it's left a sort of a rump society here that largely doesn't value education. If you don't value education, or you're going to get some high school education, then you're going to wind up working at Wendy's. And the people who get a college education don't come back. So I think there's a certain sort of social process going on in Carroll County that leaves the poor here, and that would be why we would have a relatively high rate of food stamp use in Carroll County. I don't think there's any shame attached to food stamp use. There's no reason for anyone to go hungry in this country. And I mean, I'm an employer. I have an average wage of it probably averages about $11 an hour. I sign all the payroll checks every week. I'm competing with China every day, every day. China has come and taken 50% of our marketplace. So every day we go to work and we compete with people who make $3 a day. And this takes a lot of thought on the part of a manager to figure out how in the world he's going to do that. Nevertheless, I'm signing payroll checks in the $10, $11 an hour range. I don't see how these guys get by. I don't see how they make it at that range. And I have no problem with helping them. The guys that work for me are hardworking people. They're doing the best that they can do. But in a global economy where they're going heads up against India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Thailand, you name it, they're simply not going to be able to earn that, say, $24 an hour that the Goodyear employees were making at Union City. And we'll notice that the Goodyear plant is shutting down at the end of the year. And we're losing all those $24 an hour jobs. And some of that's going to go overseas. There are going to be people left behind in this process. And I have no problem supporting them. As you see, it's all the same phenomena we're addressing.
Now you say supporting them. Again, now that would be, as I interpret what you're saying, though, the government supporting them.
Well, to the extent that we fund the government, it would be the rest of all society.
Well, right.
Right. Yes, sir. That's right.
But
Yeah, whether it's
as
food
opposed to
stamps or
some
whether
other-
it's
right.
earned income, a tax refund, or there are
Well,
different sorts of programs.
I think you said I have no problem in supporting them. I take it you meant through government programs.
Correct.
That's what I understood you to mean.
Right.
And so now there is a movement going on in Congress, as I understand, to perhaps curtail and eliminate a lot of the programs that are going to benefit this element that you're speaking of.
Right.
And so would you then be in favor of those budgetary restraints or not?
Well, I'd have to address them one by one.
Well, it's just in general.
Yeah,
In general.
in
the
general-
overall concept.
In general, we are going to have to get our fiscal house in order first. If we don't do that first, then nothing else will matter. And I think that's going to make it difficult to have all the programs we'd like to have. I mean, for instance, we can't have free, unlimited health care for everyone in America. That can't happen. We can't afford that, and the Chinese will not lend us the money to do it. So, within fiscal, reasonable constraints, we need to be sure that people aren't going hungry in this country. But we can't spend money we don't have.
So, okay, well, again, that brings us back to taxation, and the Republican Party, as I would understand it, in Congress would be opposed to increases in taxes, say, to pay for some of these programs of which you've just spoken.
So there are two ways. There are two ways to increase government revenue. One way would be to increase taxation in the short term, but of course, people's behavior is not static. It's fluid. They respond to changes in taxation. The other way to increase government revenue is to grow the economy, and that is clearly the preferred way, rather than trying to tax our way into a balanced budget. I don't think we can tax our way into a balanced budget.
You implied to me, Malcolm, that our economy is going to remain stagnant for some time.
No, I didn't say our economies would remain stagnant. I said that I would have said that the average income of the middle class will remain stagnant, but that's very different from the economy remaining stagnant. The economy, of course, is growing every year simply because we have more people in the country. We have immigrants and we have internal growth as well. And all of that generates government revenue. So those aren't, GDP growth and government revenue growth are not the same as, say, median family income.
Okay. Well, I'm about to run out of my tape, and I want to thank you for, and I'm going to have to follow up later, when I can catch you at a Wendy's later, and have time to think of some questions in advance that I can attempt to trap you with.